The creators of this podcast documentary series would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this project was made. This program may contain names, images, or voices of deceased persons.
I left behind a 16-year-old food forest, and when I left, I never intended to leave it. I intended to leave and go away for a year or something, and I intended to go back. And I didn't own it, the share of that land, of that community, and the owner decided she wasn't going to let me to come back. But the interesting thing was, if she'd have turned up there when I was actually living there and said, "You can't live here anymore," I would have been devastated, absolutely devastated. And I couldn't imagine deciding to not ever be there again. But when she actually said, "You can't come back," I'd already come here, right? Started creating another food forest, totally embedded myself in the landscape here. And when she said it, I just went, "Oh yeah, okay."
As an artist, I want to tell stories about nature, in nature, and for nature. But I have realized that being behind the camera isn't enough. I want to get my hands dirty. That's how this podcast documentary series came to life. We're not only learning from our mentors. Together, we're also committing to an action that gives back to Earth. Or how I like to say, a la pacha. My name is Mauri, and this is Environment Art Stories. Well, I wanted to tell you why I kind of thought about you guys doing this podcast. And it's because it was a pretty shittiest moment of my life. I was a bit lost, confused after spending a bit of my life is trying to connect with the ocean, diving on boats. And then suddenly I just got drawn back to land and I felt like I wanted to learn about trees. I felt I wanted to learn about plants. I didn't know anything about plants. So I sent an email to this gathering of permaculture happening in Southeast Queensland. And I said, I want to volunteer. And there was this guy answering, which is Rupert, just sitting next to me here. And said, yeah, I can volunteer for the party because they're basically what they do is a gathering where there's lots of people that are interested in nature and permaculture. So they come together once a year and they do an action where they actually do something, plant gardens, plant trees, or do different types of activities, and then they have a party, they celebrate. So this event was organized by a guy called Rupert, which was, in my understanding, a musician, also interested in nature, and he wanted to combine both. Like, how can I do this? How can I mix arts, music, what I like to do, have fun, and nature, and then grounded permaculture action party happening. When I came to this place, I was volunteering, and they sent me, just go help Suvi. He's up on top of the field, go help Suvi. And I came to this place where we are sitting now, and there was this guy, which is a tree man. Like, all I could feel, he was a tree man. So I helped him in the garden a bit, and he started talking about trees and plants. And there was one thing that caught my attention, which was that he said, wherever I go, for the last 30 years, I just plant trees. I don't know if I'm going to stay like for a week or a month or a year, but just plant trees. That's the thing I do. And I said, okay, there's a story I wanna try to share here. And the reason why we are interviewing them together is because they live on the same land. So their feet are standing on the same land, they're neighbors, and they both grow food. They both have probably their interests, but they share something, which is plants, which is trees. And they're like, yeah, growing their roots on the same land. So I think this would be a great choice to hear what happens here. And when I say here, that brings me to the opening of this podcast, which is where I want to acknowledge the people, the traditional custodians of this land. And I mean the First Nations people, the Aboriginal people of Australia. And yeah, I would like to spend this minute acknowledging that this is Aboriginal land and pay our respects to the elders of the people of Yugambeh Country. So my first question is, what's a food forest?
It's a good question. Who wants to get
Probably means different things to different people.
Yeah.
And I would actually like to begin answering that question by saying that food is far beyond what we generally consider the word to mean. I see it as anything that nourishes us, and that can be on many levels through many senses. So, what is a food forest? It's a forest that feeds us. But I would say a forest that feeds us on many levels. And I could expand on that a lot, but it kind of feels nice to leave it at that right now at this moment.
Yeah. I think when you say food forest, it conjures up some sort of like ancient dreaming, because we kind of, if we subscribe to the evolutionary theory, it's like, yeah, we've come from the forest. And this idea that food operates or is grown as part of some sort of forest ecosystem, like we were talking this morning, we've got the big forests, big rainforest, big old rainforest. But then we've got the micro forest that's, below knee high. So it's like food is grown in the forest ecosystem on all levels, at all scales.
Any forest could feed you, right? Because there's
For
forest
all
feed you, yeah.
all forests,
Yeah.
even a big monoculture crop of wheat
But this
is a forest.
and this kind of specific food forest is where human intervenes a bit more or assists more than
I think humans have to intervene.
Yeah.
It's part of our role since becoming conscious, really. Since we developed that prefrontal cortex and sort of we come out of the trees, we moved out of the trees, went into the savannas, had to become more nomadic and shifting, and then develop the technology and consciousness and awareness of time. But there's that calling. It's like back to the forest. Yeah, that's kind of one way I see it.
So it's a circle because, we came from the forest. And if we look at forest cultures that are still intact today, we can observe from their interactions culturally how, what the roots of that relationship is. And I like to think of a story a friend of mine shared, which I shared with you a bit earlier, about where he was traveling in the Amazon, living with some forest people, and they offered to take him to their garden, family garden. And that ended up being a trek into the jungle that led them to a part of the jungle that just, on first glance, just looked like a part of the jungle. And they stopped. And he was like, here we are in the jungle, where's the garden? And then he realized there were fruit on the ground all around. And when he looked up, he saw that the canopy was all fruit trees. And the guy said to him, yeah, my ancestors planted this like 150 years ago or something. And, my family maintains it. And we have other gardens like this in the jungle. So, in their interaction with the jungle, then became a cyclic one, moving from garden to garden. And I think modern permaculture, which is probably most people's understanding now of a food forest when you first mentioned that perm, popularized by Bill Mollison and more recently by Jeff Lawton, David Holmgren, of course. That idea of a food forest is more from the perspective of where we are now. How do we create an abundant, permanent culture? And obviously basing our food production on perennials marries stability of the land with abundance and productivity and permanence. So, you know, very much now the perception of food forests is like what we're trying to achieve in terms of self-sufficiency or whatever, but everything that those guys did with permaculture was modeled on what people have been doing for millennia, from observing cultural practices in various cultures that had food forest cultures. So yeah, food forest goes back a long way.
So I'm coming back to something that you mentioned, is like the modern permaculture. So I don't know much about it. I've been trying to learn, but I feel it's like too wide to attack like in one single hour, right?
Permaculture?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense like we could be talking hours about what is it, but there's something that I've heard when we were like these activities, for example, like the one that we were doing today. So for this podcast has this section where we talk about nature and we ask people that we believe that they can teach us about what we want to know, what we want to learn. And the idea is not only talk about nature or whatever we're talking about, but also make an action, which is the section of called Alapacha, which means back to earth. And this morning what we were doing this morning. So can you explain to us what we were doing, which stage of, so you already planted the food forest, of course, a couple of years. And yeah,
which isn't a forest yet, but it's in process.
Yeah, so tell us what was going on here a couple of hours before.
Well, we were just doing like a very targeted and timed disturbance to a system that is emerging as a forest. And we've selectively planted things or strategically planted things to assist that process of a forest emerging. And it's that disturbance that facilitates growth. Kind of operates on a physical level straight up just with plants, but then it also, you know, is true on a metaphysical level as humans. It's the disturbance that we face or experience that stimulates growth.
So the main goal of that disturbance would be like assisting
growth,
like accelerating some process that the nature has already.
Yes. Yep. We going back to permaculture. It's big.
What's permaculture? Like really quick to people that probably never heard about that.
Look, people, like there's lots of different definitions of it. You know, people say it's a design science and with framed with a set of ethics that helps us make more sort of holistic and wholesome decisions. And some people say it's food forests and this and that. If we look at the word permaculture as a portmanteau derived from permanent agriculture originally, more so these days permanent culture. And I sort of see it as, it's like, well, what's culture? Okay, what is culture? It's like it's the stories, it's the art, it's the beliefs of community, of a group of people. And so and then what are those stories, beliefs, observations, facts of reality that are most permanent across time and space? So what is true about human beings existing in community, in culture, that can be translated across space and time, across tens of thousands of years, across every climate. And when we look at it, it's like, well, you just come back to the basics, which is human beings have a fundamental relationship with the land that they live on. We have to. Provides all of our basic physical needs. And then once our basic physical needs are taken care of, we sort of get together in groups and community, and we operate in like communities. And now we're in a macro global community of communities within communities within communities, all overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
And then
because some people is
the
closer
culture.
than you, like physically, right? So you can have wider communities that people that kind of engage like in a yearly event or whatever, but there's people around you more close to you physically, so
Well,
that's easier to combine, right?
In modern day, there's lots of overlapping communities. Olden day, we're talking 20,000 years ago, it was pretty simple definition of community. We were in our tribal bands and that was about it. Yeah. Unless you subscribe to the theory that, there was all the ancient civilizations before the last ice age, but that's a whole nother thing.
But it's also good because you can get together with friends to plant trees, because you kind of like to plant the amount of food that we've seen. So it's like, just bring some friends and have some fun, and then they help each other in their own gardens. But I reckon it's something that anyone can do anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Even the amount of space that you have, for example, if you live in a city.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's more about like relationship.
Yeah.
And connection.
Yeah.
Just beginning some sort of relationship with the plants.
And
with the soil.
Yeah. And with the people. So
the
maxim that sort of sums it up really is the earth care, people care, fair share.
Which is the three ethics.
The three ethics of permaculture as the cornerstones, or the triangles.
And those ethics were only derived out of observations that Bill and David found when studying a whole bunch of indigenous cultures all across the world, all across time. And they're like, hey, there's a common theme here. There's a common theme that all indigenous people share. And this is it.
Yeah.
And
it was created in Tasmania, right? In Australia.
Yeah.
Permaculture,
So Bill,
I didn't know that. I got to know that here. And I read it, but it was like, okay.
Not just here in Australia, but here fairly locally. Yeah. It was originated.
But inspired by like...
Just over the border in another state, but not far away.
That's where Bill's main first farm was kind of set up. I think it was the late 80s and 90s. Yeah. He had it going on and it kind of...
Tyalgum.
It's
not far away at all.
Just on the other side there.
There's also I feel there's also lots of sources of inspiration, like Amazon, the Amazon in South America, food that they grew in South America, then Japanese agriculture systems as well.
Yeah, and I mean, they were academics, so they were obviously intelligent people who studied a lot, different things they were interested in, and one of the things they were interested in was the things that eventually melded together to become permaculture. Yeah. But for me, it kind of, if we go a bit deeper, for me, it's actually about what is it to be human?
Yeah.
What is it to be human here on Earth? What are we here for?
Yeah.
And if we are truly part of the Earth and part of the systems of the Earth, what is our place in that? And for me personally, I feel that the human role on Earth is to be stewards. We kind of have a special role that somehow, with, the cognitive functions we have some ability to be able to take different elements and somehow create a balance between them. And our role in doing that revolves around our relationships with the earth and our relationships with each other. And that means art and culture. So art is very much a part of it, be it music. People for millennia have been gathering together, dancing and singing and planting crops and having that relationship. And art of any culture that's well established is functional. All art is functional. So everything you use, everything that you create is art. And it has a functional purpose in a stable culture.
I like that concept that earlier when we were working in the gardens, you said pruning is an art. I like that. So when it comes to actually physically touching, like for example, what we were doing today, which was basically chop and drop, right?
Yep.
So what what were we doing, like physically, like in which stage of managing a food forest? Because I plant the trees. I start with this food security concept, which it would be good that you could explain a bit more, and then what I do.
What do you mean? What do you do?
Well, I can see like, I don't know, maybe hundreds of trees here. They grow because we are like in this subtropical area, so there's a lot of rain, there's a lot of sun. Now we're in winter, so how that's working here?
I know where you're going with the art thing, right? And it's kind of like, okay, you want to be an artist. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can be an artist. You can be painting on canvas, acrylic on canvas. It can be bloody
making
oil
podcast
on canvas. Yeah. Well, let's say you're sculpting something. It could be clay. It could be, there's like a whole different way, many different ways to create some art piece. It's like working in the garden is the same thing. You've got to know how each tool works, and every single plant is a tool. And you've got to know how that works, and then how you can work with it so that it can do what it is just normally naturally going to do, and then create your masterpiece. Because like Suvi was saying earlier, it's like, all right, I got my tree. What is that ultimately going to be? How long is that going to take? So how do I what am I going to do in between? What else am I going to let grow around it? And so you kind of, it is definitely an art form to it.
It's a dynamic art.
Dynamic art, yeah.
So we are landscape artists.
We are, bloody oath we are.
And so, you can do that freeform. You can do that freeform without any idea where it's going. I know an artist, an amazing artist, friend of mine, and literally he stands in front of a canvas and he's just slapping on paint. And then as that process unfolds, you just see this bloody mess. But then somehow out of that, he gets an inspiration and then sees something and then starts to release that thing that he saw by manipulating the paint that he's put on there, by adding more paint and just manipulating it. And all of a sudden, out of that mess comes an amazing image. So, and in a way, that's what it's like, because we don't really know exactly how it's going to end up. You don't know what plants are going to die in the process. There'll be casualties for sure, right? You don't know how the process is going to unfold. But you do have an idea of what direction you wanted to go in, and a sort of general idea of how it's going to end up.
So to explain a little bit to people that don't know what we're talking about, because what I can see physically, there's like heaps of trees planted kind of like in the same garden bed. So everything will grow, everything will try to get its own space, get its own water and sun, so they'll fight each other, and then you'll kind of like, so what happens there? That's when we come and we manage it?
They don't really fight or compete. That's a common myth, right? So it's they've got to be playing the same game. To be in direct competition, you got to be playing the same game by the same rules. And a eucalyptus planted next to a mulberry, or a great example I saw Suvi do the other day, a taro planted next to a banana, they're not playing by the same rules.
Why?
Because the banana has a different protocol, you might say, a different code, a formula that it grows to, and it occupies a different space, different strata in space, and it has a different life cycle in time. And so the taro right next to it is playing by a different set of rules. So they're not necessarily competing. So this is the whole idea of companion planting, the whole idea of like syntropic farming or agriculture, which has really refined it to a fine art. If we're talking about art, it's knowing what the protocol of each plant is, and so what's its strata in space, and what's its life cycle in time, and its growth profile, and how much light it needs, and everything like this. And so you can have plants occupying the same space, but they have a different life cycle, or they occupy a different space. They occupy different strata in space as well, even though they're in the physically same space. So they're not necessarily going to be competing. They're actually going to be But for example, over here, right, just over here, we've got red cedars. And it's like nearly a monoculture of red cedars. They're all competing. They're all pushing for the same, they're trying to occupy the same space in the same time. So they are in direct competition. And it's on our list to go through there and start selectively thinning some of them out so that they get a bit more space to grow. And that happens a lot.
There's a brilliant little video online that I've seen of in the jungle in Sumatra or somewhere. And they've got, in Southeast Asia, there's macarangas, like we've got macarangas here. There's macarangas in a lot of the jungles of Southeast Asia. And just like here, they grow quite big, but they're a pioneer, and they colonize vacant space, basically, to get things going. And there's a brilliant video where a giant tree in the canopy falls in the forest, right? And then basically from that moment, and you've got all these seedlings. So in the forest, what happens is seeds are dropping all over the place.
All the time.
On the forest floor. And they just sprout, and then they just sit there and almost in a dormancy at just a small size until something triggers. If the light comes in, there's the disturbance, and that triggers the growth. And then it's a race. It's a competition. Because ultimately in the forest, ultimately down the track, only one of those plants is going to really fill that space. And so, yeah, there's this video where they time-lapse photography over time, this race for the canopy. And it goes through a few winners because the pioneers are first. So you get pioneers that reach there first, but they're short-lived. And below that, in that first pulse, some of the climax species made it a bit further, and then they went into sort of pausing again, right? And then when the macaranga dies that took the space, so there's a whole process depending on what its eventual function is and its eventual purposes and role is.
I like how names are coming up now. Macaranga, cassava, taro. So probably people that they don't know it, they'll be like Googling it. So because it's different where you are, right? Because of the landscape and climate where you plant. But talking about Southeast Queensland, which is a subtropical area.
Yep.
Tell me five plants. Like you say, like you must have these plants to start with. Like, what do I plant?
What's your intention?
I bought a little bit of land and I have some trees and it's kind of like a mess. But instead of I want to plant stuff. Not only food, like natives as well. But which would you say 5 foods that you say like this is 5?
So you're just concentrating on food.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be the article. You know the article, so. Then we're going to share some information, where to find more information. But not the survival foods, but it could be those there. Or what is that we have there, like whatever.
Well, Suvi was talking about pigeon pea this morning. That's a really good one. But it depends like where you are. It's like you can use what naturally grows there. And like Suvi was saying, it's like what's your purpose? It's like look at what's growing around and look at what wants to grow and then use that to your advantage. So
then you check the one that you want in the middle.
Yeah, well, it depends on what, what you want and what's that, I guess where the land is at in its journey of establishing itself as in its full expression, right? Of its what it wants to be, whether it's the savanna kind of grassy plains or it's actual forest in the hills,
like this one. Like a rainforest.
Yeah. This is the forest. Yeah, we're in the forest, even though there's lots of cleared land around us.
But I like that it's forest. Like surrounded by native species and the actual native forest. Like
there's also a lot of weeds here.
Yeah, weeds.
And there's a definition of weed, which is a plant out of place, out of context. So to a steward, there's no such thing because they're just playing a role.
Yeah.
And if you look at where weeds came from, most of the weeds are either something that evolved in, say, a temperate climate after the Ice Age to colonize vacant land when the ice receded, or in the tropics because you've got such a dynamic, especially in a rainforest, a dynamic situation where there's just so much going on. And like I said, when there's a void, then there is competition to fill the void. And that has created some plants that are so capable of dominating, that you put them out of context in another climate or that favors them over even the native species, then there are some examples where you'll get, say, a vine, for example. In New Zealand, there's a vine they call it old man's beard, clematis. It can cover, I think it's something like 1.2 hectares, one plant, of canopy, of forest, one vine.
So you were...
Just smothered, right? So there are weeds, but if you're managing, that would have never happened. So if a steward is managing, right? A steward is there kind of playing a role in keeping a balance. And if someone puts their hands up to do that, you could use anything. You could arrive in a new place and your 5 plants, you could look around and see the most successful weeds that are obviously playing that pioneer role, and you could plant them and they would begin the process. And then within that, then you can start putting in the things you want as you acquire them. So there's that approach, or you can choose 5 plants and they're going to produce food and then use those as your pioneers and get some abundance and productivity from it at the same time.
You mentioned New Zealand. So this is a question that I really want to make because I've been traveling a bit, so I never had the place to grow plants. But I know that you moved a bit. You lived in New Zealand. You planted a food forest there.
Yep.
And you plant some food forests.
Couple of food forests, yeah.
So how do you, so you get to a place and you say like, am I going to plant trees that I'm never going to eat the fruit of? How do you live that process?
As I was explaining before about my experiences in Samoa as a child or as a teenager, where I wasn't really, just to explain, like Samoa is a culture, Polynesian culture, 2,500 years old, basically permaculture in action. And I wasn't at all interested in gardening. I was interested in nature. So just being interested in nature and moving around in a culture that was essentially permaculture in action. When I look back later, I somehow, without thinking about it, absorbed that culture, so that when I then became interested later in permaculture, I started having all these memories of what I'd experienced and witnessed and observed that sort of made it all real for me. And so when I then decided I'm going to find a blank canvas and I'm going to play around and I'm going to learn how to put this into practice, I kind of already had all of that and was armed with the information of Permaculture 1 and like the principles behind permaculture. But then I was just one person in the wilderness pretty much, in a community that was in a place like this, but end of the road, surrounded by national parks. Literally the only car you ever hear is if someone's coming to visit. And I had the space to just do it. And there was things I got wrong. Or not wrong, but there were things that could have been done better that I then learnt from.
And that's a point, and you made it before, it's like, it's a practice, so it's like, even if you're only somewhere temporary, you're practicing. And it's a practice that you just do for your whole life. So it's like, you could spend, I'm just going to wait till I get my own block, spend 10 years doing all the research in your head, and then 20 years even maybe, and then you finally get on the block and you've wasted the time. You could have been doing anything, anywhere.
Anywhere. And then if you leave, someone else will enjoy it, and then you'll leave somewhere else that someone already planted. And
and this is like one thing, because we're both not landowners, and Suvi's been doing it for 30 years. I'm only up to about 6-7 years of planting food forests, and it's like, you don't own the land, but it's like, if everybody did this, it wouldn't matter where you move to, because someone else has been doing it before you.
You've been learning,
and you just step in and you keep doing it, and we all become custodians and stewards of everywhere.
Yeah. So you realise, when you reach that point where you realise the whole world is my garden.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole world is your garden.
Did it ever happen that you had to leave a place that you've been planning for a long time, and how do you felt about that?
I left behind a 16-year-old food forest, and when I left, I never intended to leave it. I left, I intended to leave and go away for a year or something, and I intended to go back. And I didn't own it, the share of that land, of that community, and the owner decided she wasn't going to let me to come back. But the interesting thing was, if she'd have turned up there when I was actually living there and said, you can't live here anymore, I would have been devastated, absolutely devastated. And I couldn't imagine deciding to not ever be there again. But when she actually said, you can't come back, I'd already come here, right? Started creating another food forest, totally embedded myself in the landscape here. And when she said it, I just went, oh, yeah, okay. It was like water off a duck's back.
Just keep it going.
And it was almost like it was just a natural flow. Like, because I'd almost pretty much decided there was no point in going back. You know, that was only the starting point, because the whole world's my garden. Doesn't matter where I go.
This garden has 2 years? Like the garden we were working today on this garden, 2 years? Or
The one up there, the swales were probably done about 8 years ago. But
Not much done.
nothing
planted,
done. And since
Just fruit
we've
trees.
been here three and a bit years, and we only started really working on it a year ago, because it was all just covered in grass, a few citrus trees, and that was it. But Suvi's, this behind us, that's 2 and a bit years, and that was just
No,
grass.
most of that's just since spring.
Yeah, that's true.
what spring? How
The
how
only
many
ones
months?
that two or not even yet, maybe a year and a half. There's a few bananas over in that corner.
Oh yeah, because you did the fence a year ago.
Yeah, that was a year ago. Most of that went in.
If you put it in a term of like a year or 2 year forests, how from 1 to 10, how much this forest contributes to your shopping, like in a week? Like you say, from a 1 to 10, just the percentage.
It's a cyclic thing. So obviously, food crops are available for a window of time.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, obviously the majority of our diet is staple foods. So we're talking about carbohydrate, protein, fats.
Fruits like oranges, limes.
That are going to
lemons.
provide calories. No, I
That's
kind
nice.
of see fruit and
Dessert,
greens
treats.
as kind of, you know, that's the nutrition. That's the full-on nutrition that gives you all of the vitamins and minerals and blah, blah. But the actual stuff that makes you function is your calories.
Yeah. But in terms like in economic level, like talking about food security, like would you eat this like regularly in your year? Like how much food do you get from your garden? So because you won't have like bananas all year round, but there's
Not
be
now.
some months in the year that you just have bananas and you don't have to go and buy
There
bananas.
will be times when there'll be bananas. We'll
then at
get
some
to the
point it
point
will
of
be
having
something
bananas
else.
all year
Yeah.
round, because bananas fruit all year round. And you can eat green bananas. And once you have mature bananas and you realize you can eat green bananas, well, hey, you've just got yourself a carbohydrate crop of high calorific value that's permanently in the landscape for long periods of time that you don't, I mean, that takes some management, but you're not replanting it all the time
And they create, like you said today, like a microclimate.
for other things.
Like so, banana is kind of like
One of the 5.
one of the 5, yeah. Banana.
One of those
In a climate where you can grow it for sure.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Which one?
Any.
This
Like,
one?
Yeah. So, yeah, describe it for the people that is not
Canaedulus.
looking at this.
Canaedulus, also known as Queensland arrowroot, also known as
Achira.
achira.
And from
Achira.
the native peoples of the highlands of the Andes who have grown that as a food crop for, I think, about 3,000 years.
So, Peru, like you would say Peru, but it's
Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia.
Los
Yeah.
Andes. See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened to the other one?
Aha.
Swamp hens.
You took a bite.
Yeah, so 2 days ago, the swamp hens I've had a running kind of relationship with since they've pretty much decimated a lot of the cassava that I had planted, mainly because you can't eat it fast enough.
Yeah.
So I got a lot to eat for a period of time. And, Yeah, and they got 2/3 of it in that time. So those swamp hens for, right up till now haven't touched taro. They only touched cassava. Yesterday morning, I came out and that had been eaten. So I made a bit of a scarecrow, which doesn't really work. This morning,
But you can still eat that. Like, you kind of like
I can still
shared
eat
it.
this, but
You could
I've
plant
lost
it
a bit,
too? Could you
but
plant that again?
I've caught it early, so now I need to strategize how to ensure that I get to eat my taro. So I might we've pulled out a nice,
What do you have?
there's an example of taro.
That's a taro.
That's actually just a piece of that one.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast in Spotify or wherever, and you want to see this, you probably have to go to the link below the description and, I don't know, check it out. If you'd like to know more about this action, just jump on the website ysdm.au. That's where you're going to find all the video content related to this episode and the whole series. Remember that this is an indie project, so support is much appreciated. If you're asking yourself, how can I help? Well, sharing social media, subscribing to our channels is much appreciated. Even a small amount donated, it will help us to produce more episodes, tell more stories, and help more communities. Also, a percentage of the donations gathered in this project will be destined to plant native trees in South America, starting in Córdoba, Argentina, the place where I was born, which has only 3% of the native forest left. Maybe you're also an artist, camera, sound operator, graphic or web design, musician, any kind of artist that want to participate in this project. Just contact us. Send us an email, send us a DM. We will find a way to make it happen. If you want to participate with us, just get in touch. Or maybe you just want to volunteer for the action of the next episode, do it as well. We can make it happen. If you also know someone that you think that we should share the story, please let us know. Ideas and proposals are more than welcome. Thank you.
So it's a food crop from Asia, which was taken into Polynesia and their main staple food for a lot of Polynesia. It grows in water. It's toxic when raw to most mammals, except rats, who seem to have a tendency to be able to tolerate levels of toxin, and also birds.
Bush turkeys.
Bush turkeys and swamp hens. And so...
So you interact with animals, like you plant the forest and you're not the only one, because like if nothing's eating your garden, it's probably not a healthy garden. Is that right?
Going back to that story about the Amazon, where my friend went into the jungle and saw this family garden, essentially those people who had been living that way for at least hundreds and hundreds of years, probably thousands, their whole practice involved visiting their gardens at the time when the animals came to eat the fruit, and eating the animals and eating the fruit, and then moving on to the next garden. And obviously in those jungles, there'd be different maybe altitudes, so the gardens would be timed differently depending on the altitude. They would have summer gardens down up in the highlands, and they'd have winter gardens down in the lowlands, because the winter's the dry season. So in the Amazon, it's drier and it's not flooding. All their gardens down lower, and they're just moving between the two seasonally, and moving between the different gardens at the different altitudes as the fruit and the animals become available at that place. So they don't go out. They don't go out to the jungle to go and find animals. The animals come to them.
Yeah. Work smart, not hard.
And that's their culture. Now, obviously, we couldn't right now, the way the world is right now, the way civilization is dominating the way it is, there's not many people are going to be fed that way. There's probably not enough forest for everyone to live that way. However, for me, there's definitely the stimulation and the inspiration and the motivation to plant more forest and to learn to live in that way. And whether you choose to eat meat or whether you choose not to eat meat, we do have a thing called human innovation, which allows us to sort of come up with ways to protect our crops, and, so you can do both. But definitely evolving our relationship with the animals is part and parcel with the land.
Yeah.
Relating with the land, because they're there and they do their thing, and you're always going to have to interact with that. So you've got to find ways to live with that.
To protect your roots from the bush turkeys, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
Coming back a little bit, I want to know a little bit about your music story. Like, tell us what's this. So I remember you saying that you're an artist, that you're a rapper, interested in music, and you want to combine this, and then Grounded happened. So, and you can, yeah.
Okay, I got that story pretty well dialed.
You can manage it like
I got that
in
dialed,
5,
right?
10.
Okay, so, I always loved music as a kid, especially as a teenager. A lot of teenagers do, right? And then I went to university and in Brizzy, and then got whisked away by a bunch of hippies to a doof. And I took psychedelics. And then I had a big awakening. I was like, whoa, I connected with the trees and everything. I was just like, whoa. And then in the few weeks post that, I had basically a mental breakdown, I guess, integrating everything. And I felt all of the pain and destruction that us humans had been causing to ourselves and the planet, for the last however long. And I was like, wow, what am I going to do? How am I going to help fix this? And so I was like, well, I'm already at uni. I'm pretty good at science and maths. I'm doing engineering. I'll do environmental engineering, right? Because I was going to do mining engineering. Why was I going to do mining engineering? Well, it's the easiest degree to make the most money, right? Least effort, most return. That's a permaculture principle. But I wasn't thinking in context of the earth. I was just thinking in context of money. And so I had the awakening. I was like, right, now I'll do environmental engineering. That'll be my practical way to help the earth, and music helped get me to this place of awakening. I love music. I will make music to raise consciousness, right? So it was basically that was it. I was like, I'll do environmental engineering to be practical. I'll do music to raise the vibration of consciousness. So my music definitely has that theme and theme throughout it through hip hop. But then I realized, music can only take it so far, right? Music's really good at facilitating internal revelations and revolutions and awakenings. But then what?
What do we do?
Yeah, exactly. How does that follow through into the physical realm?
I mean, you can go to a party.
Yeah.
Like you can go to a party and dance, but you wanted to do like people have fun and do something about it.
Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of where Grounded is. It's like you get people when they're in that state of like, whoa, and then you hand them a shovel.
You say, let's plant
some trees.
Yeah. So so you want to share just the social media of Grounded, or how is it called? So people can look for it?
Well, the organization's called Grounded Permaculture Action Party. Well, and it's incorporated, so Inc.
So basically you get together, you can do a course of permaculture, 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we have we have 2 PDCs a year that you can do with us. And then we have our action parties, a couple of big events throughout the year, lots of smaller retreats, lots of smaller one-day informal get-togethers.
So you learn about nature, you get to do some action, meet some people, have some fun, eat good food, and learn about permaculture.
Pretty much, yeah. What we've been doing forever as humans, like
pretty cool.
What our ancestors have been doing forever and what our descendants will continue to do forever. No matter what happens in the world, people are going to look after the land and grow food and share that food and celebrate. That's just what's going to happen. No matter what happens in the world, it's like the people that will survive will do that.
And you play music.
Yeah,
people will play music.
The celebration, yeah, of course. That's what happens. So that's what happens, right? You're a community. You've come together. You've taken care of your physical needs, and you're like, cool.
Spend time in nature.
We got everything sorted.
Clean everything.
What are we going to do? Let's have fun. Let's celebrate. Let's sing and dance. And
yeah. And you say you wanted to share a webpage or project?
I have a Facebook page called Food Forests for Food Autonomy, which I've kind of managed very minimally, but I put stuff on there and it's got slowly getting a bit of a following. So it's kind of creating a little bit of a platform that I haven't really done anything with yet. but that's kind of poised to have a lot more input from me that then I can kind of develop a bit more. Yeah, so people are welcome to go there and check it out and look ahead that there's going to be more stuff coming on there.
Mm-hmm. So we have pigeon pea. We have to finish the 5. Pigeon pea,
Cassava?
banana.
Banana?
That wasn't in the original 5, but yeah.
What wasn't?
Oh, which one are the
Well,
original
you said more
5?
carbs, didn't you?
The little article that I put out was focused on perennial carbs.
Yeah.
And that was banana, cassava, taro, sweet potato. Oh, what was the last one?
Arrowroot.
Queensland arrowroot.
So we have Queensland arrowroot over here.
Yeah.
Canna edulis,
Canna edulis.
which is South American.
Yeah.
Like really good to eat it raw as well. You're gonna eat it raw?
You can eat it raw. I wouldn't say it's good to eat.
Yeah.
Prefer it good.
There's a big difference between edible and palatable.
Yeah. Cassava, which
Cassava?
That's carin.
Yeah, so that's the easiest thing in the world to plant. It's like basically stick in the ground, mulch.
How do you know which side you
4 or
plant?
5 months later, food. How do you know which type?
What side you plant and what side points
yeah.
to top?
You do it.
Yeah, so you've got nodes here where the leaves were. And if you look at those nodes, on one side of the node, there's a little bud.
Yeah.
All the way up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want that above. But it actually doesn't really matter because they still grow. But yeah, that's the best way.
So cassava, which is, I think, if I'm not confused, is called mandioca.
Manioc, manihot, depending on where you come
Mandioca
from.
in Spanish.
Yep.
It's Brazilian, it's South American. And they also make flour. It's called tapioca for the people
That's
that
right.
know
Correct.
that plant for other name.
Yeah, so it produces very large tubers.
Are carefree. It's just like put it in the ground, it'll grow, and it's like you just come
It's the
check it
easiest
out
food crop
around.
in the world, really, if you've got the climate that'll support it. Yep. And there are different varieties. This particular variety is what we call yellow cassava, or it's a variety of yellow cassava. There's several. And yellow, like cassava, if you have the common, or what's commonly planted in Australia is the white one. And that doesn't have a lot of nutrition. It's just basically starch. I have a feeling this has a bit more to it. Probably has a bit of vitamin A because it's got the yellow color when you cook it. And it has a really good texture, and I think this is a superior variety. So this is the best variety I've actually ever grown and eaten. I've got about 3 or 4 varieties here. I like this one the best. Yeah.
So one good thing to say about cassava as well, that is that you eat the roots and you have to cook them a lot.
Yeah.
Like boil them, right? Because
they do
it could
have
be poisonous
cyanide
if you
in
eat it
them.
raw.
You cannot eat them raw.
yeah.
And also if they get a bit old. But you can usually see that because if they've spoiled, they get a sort of a grey discoloration that goes through it, and you just don't cook it, don't prepare it, don't eat it.
That's great.
But having said that, commonly what's done in the tropics, in the places where this is subsistence food, is they create flour. So there's a whole process of getting the roots, peeling them, grating them, drying them in the sun, then milling them into a flour, and then it stores for months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have the original 5, which were taro, cassava, banana, sweet potato, and arrowroot or canna. And then we had the 5 of today. The 5 that we worked today. We saw I think we talked a bit about comfrey.
Yeah, comfrey in this context is a good thing. Yeah, and it's a
Pigeon pea?
dynamic accumulator of minerals because it puts its roots down so deep in the soil.
Pigeon pea is good because it grows on shade as other trees like avocados. They need a bit of shade. How does that work?
Yeah, it provides a microclimate.
Yeah.
It's a nitrogen fixer. It's fast growing, very hardy, and fairly short-lived. So it occupies the space.
Yeah.
And then passes that space on to something else.
Really nice, like supple mulch.
Yep.
Very soft, easy to prune. You can just don't even need a tool. You can just by
Break
hand,
it.
pull it apart.
Yeah.
And apparently it's the 6th most grown legume in the world by quantity.
It's probably the original dal from India.
They use it as dal, especially in the sort of drier climates, like the dry tropics, dry subtropics, even on the arid fringe.
Yeah.
They actually grow pretty well in that kind of climate. In Africa as well, they grow in heaps.
So we have pigeon pea. I don't even remember what we say already.
From this morning, or just
Comfrey, pigeon pea.
what else?
We saw
was it?
cassava. We saw taro.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, I'd probably do arrowroot before I do taro as a kind of because it's more readily available, because it's less likely to get eaten by other animals, so it's not going to
Grows faster.
Yeah,
Produces more biomass.
Yep, it's probably one of the most high quality starches.
Yeah.
They actually use it industrially.
Yeah.
It's got very coarse starch granules. And it's the most digestible of all the starches.
I was also reading that they mix it with the cassava to make tapioca.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so going back to your question a while ago when you said, okay, how would you start? If you took your 5 plants, the interesting thing about those 5 plants is that they occupy different levels. So they do coexist quite well. So your pigeon pea and your cassava are kind of shrubs, basically.
Mhm.
Your I would probably add sugarcane myself, because I think that's such a high food value plant.
You have sugarcane there, right?
Yep. So the best way I found to grow it is to get a plant established really quickly. This is the top section of a stem, and I've sat that in water for a while, and then now it's putting out roots. Now I'll plant that in the ground upright like that, and every one of these nodes is going to grow a new stem, so that will become a clump in one season. You can grow every single individual node as a plant. Every node has its own bud, similar to the cassava. The little bud there. And it'll grow out of that. And then once, like, roots will come out of the node, but then once the bud grows, it'll get its own nodes and it'll start putting out roots, and then it'll start also putting out other buds. So it's an exponential thing.
It's good.
And you can chew it and get the full nutrition out of the sugar, not just sucrose and fructose. And so all the goodness that you'd get in molasses, unprocessed, is there in raw sugarcane. And it doesn't seem to, I mean, cultures chew this and press it and use the juice, and it doesn't seem to rot teeth.
Yeah.
So maybe the whole plant as a whole food, doesn't have the same effect as rotting your teeth eating sugar.
It's like eating coca leaves, chewing coca leaves versus snorting cocaine.
Exactly.
It's exactly the same process. Refining it to that potent. Get that one little.
And there may be a synergistic thing of all the elements within it. Yeah. And so in Papua New Guinea, they were growing sugarcane as a food crop 10,000 years ago.
That's great.
So you've got arrowroot, sugarcane. You could put taro, you could put a few things in as well, but they're your clumping herbaceous perennials. And
you chop a couple greens as well.
Galangal right next to you is a good one.
Yeah.
Because that keeps its form. Whereas, as does sugarcane.
That's the sugarcane here.
You retain sugarcane through the winter.
Some greens.
Whereas arrowroot sort of dies down a bit. Greens. So then
this is purple, but
that's just shrubby stuff. So you want to have a sort of clumping perennial sort of structure with shrubby stuff that's going to provide biomass and canopy. And then your banana takes it to the canopy to another level. And if you put those things together, you've got abundant food. And then from there, once you create a microclimate, it's all kinds of other things where as you change the climate, you're going to be able to slot things in. Papaya, could be chilies, other perennial plants that produce food. Ginger and turmeric we were talking about before as fantastic food forests.
And the medicine
crops
as well.
And medicine and culinary uses. And crops that you can make an income out of if you're still needing to do that. And so there's a lot of elements there that you can build on once you've got that basic pioneer structure happening.
That's great. I think this conversation has been really great. I feel that we're coming to a conclusion of it. But I don't know if you have something else to say. You can say that. But I know that you're a rapper as well. So I was feeling if we could end the podcast with you rapping, and when you finish rapping, that's it. Like it can be like 1 minute.
Put me on
if
the
you feel
spot.
like.
Put me on the spot.
Before that happens, I've got 2 shout-outs I want to make.
Yeah.
The first one is to my mate Philip Harry Malt, otherwise known as Harry, who was the guy that visited those people in the Amazon and came up with that story of his experiences there.
Yeah.
So big ups to Harry out there. And also to my son, Pawi, who turns 5 today. Unfortunately, I can't be there with him for his birthday because I'm here doing this.
Oh my God, thank you so much for that.
So that's a bit of a sacrifice I've made.
I didn't know that.
He's an amazing kid who's like having the opportunity to see all this in process. And I'm really looking forward to how that kind of unfolds for him in his life.
Okay, thank you so much for that. But I'm sure you'll celebrate soon. Would you like to thank... You can look your music, We can actually connect the headphones to your phone and you can listen if you need it. But you want to thank someone, Rupert? Give
All
a special
you
thanks.
guys, everybody, the universe, my
that's good.
family,
Yeah, that's good.
my friends.
I would like to thank my family as well. Mi familia. Thank you. Gracias.
Yeah, man. No, it's good. I'm just trying to think of what... Okay, I got something, right? This is old. It's kind of like a go-to. I don't think I've ever published it anywhere officially, but yeah, right? Really? Okay. I think it's on point for this conversation. Okay. The people with the... Hey, what? Okay. The people with the power are talking doublespeak and backtracking on their words like their shit don't stink. I have to think twice and read 3 times just to cut through the spin. Sound bites bait the hook, but they ain't reeling me in. With their propaganda to command the fear within. The real people with the power, you can't vote them in. Puppeteers pull the strings and the curtains wearing thin, and I'm here to demand we tear down this shit. Let's philosophize on paradigms to change the way we live our lives and meditate on miracles that happen right before our eyes. The turning point is coming, and the moment's going to mobilize the minds of the masses that are waiting for the sun to rise. Steady as we lie, spreading truth from the underside, emerging from the belly of the beast after a hunger strike, dispelling all these sordid lies while feasting on this gorgeous mic and propagating awesomeness in all directions far and wide.
Environment Art Stories is a Yo Soy del Mundo production, written, produced, and directed by me, Mauri Badra. The sound is edited and mixed by Yves Bongiovanni. The main music is created by Hamza Mas. Graphic design is by Mari Arnold, who you can also hear at the beginning of the episode. Nerin Gale recorded the sound for this episode. Rowan Seiko was the camera operator for the episode. Max Squires shared with us his music. We would also like to thank Joy Eka, Fleur Desiree Wagner, and the whole Ground the Permaculture crew.
To check out the action videos, jump on our website, ysdm.au. Please keep in mind that this podcast documentary series is an independent project with no private or public grants or funding. Your support counts, so please follow the podcast on your chosen listening platform and visit ysdm.au to subscribe or donate. Donations are much appreciated as the funds collected are used to produce future episodes. With your help, we can tell more stories.